Outside the Lines reports that there is a groundswell of support to deny Isiah Thomas part ownership of the WNBA's Liberty. Thomas turned in paperwork to be a partial owner of the team last week. He needs approval from the league's board of governors for his ownership application to go through. The WNBA president told the AP last week that she hopes to have this issue resolved before the season starts, which is June 5th. Thomas was introduced as the Liberty president, saying he hopes everyone keeps an open mind in regards to his past.
If you go back and you look at the way I've lived my life and the people who have dealt with me personally, I'm proud of the way I lived my life, and I'm proud of the man that I stand here today before you.
So after being fired as Knicks coach in 2008, he remained with the team in an unspecified role, even after a lawsuit brought by former team employee Anucha Brown. Sanders, she alleges that she was sexually harassed in a civil suit. The jury awarded Brown about $11.6 million in damages for being improperly fired, but Thomas himself was not found personally liable financially. Stephen A., your reaction to everything that's happening?
Well, my reaction is I'm pretty disgusted with Mr. James Dolan, because I think it puts Isiah Thomas in a precarious position of having to defend himself against charges and allegations that ultimately ended up in MSG doling out $11.6 million in punitive damages, when Mr. Dolan himself says that Isiah Thomas had little to nothing to do with this. If that's the case, then why bring him back with the Liberty, which is obviously a women's basketball league, when this national champion, two-time NBA champion, Hall of Famer, and one of the 50 greatest players in NBA history, clearly would prefer to be with the New York Knicks, regardless of what anybody thinks or what he himself says. It doesn't seem to make much sense. It seems to set the stage for the kind of questions that are being put before us. Now, the bottom line is this: Anucha Brown Sanders and her lawyers went after Isiah Thomas and MSG for sexual harassment. Ultimately, MSG was found liable. They had to pay $11.6 million. Talking to Isiah Thomas, having his name attached to this obviously does not look good. I have said that to him. Other folks in the NBA who are close to him have said that to him. And Kerry, Skip, you all know that I've known Isiah Thomas for about 20 years. I can't talk to him about this. This is as volatile as he gets. I have never seen him more volatile, more angry, more furious than when the word sexual harassment and his name gets associated in the same sentence. He has been adamant and defiant that he has never been guilty of sexual harassment. He is quick to point to the lawsuit, and he gets into the particulars. This is years ago, Skip. I haven't spoken to him about this in more than 2 years. This guy gets into it where he's talking about how he blames the media. He says because the legal system itself, look at the papers, read the transcripts, look at their verdict. It's $11.6 million against Madison Square Garden. He says, Stephen A., I worked at Terrytown, which is 40 minutes away. Steve Mills was the president of Madison Square Garden at the time. He didn't say that, but everybody knows Steve Mills was the president of Madison Square Garden. Steve Mills and James Dolan have adamantly denied they're guilty of such things, but that doesn't matter because the jury found MSG liable, and that's why you had to pay out $11.6 million. There's no and I keep saying there's no getting around that. But where Isiah comes in is that read the particulars. He says Stephon Marbury was guilty of having an affair with an intern who worked under Anucha Brown Sanders. And as a result, because he was president, they said you're liable because your house was incorrect because this happened under your watch. And he said, how is that in God's name having me associated with sexual harassment? And then even the case that came down, it wasn't for sexual harassment. It was for a hostile working environment. And that working environment is not where I was working because I was 40 minutes away. So when he explains all of this stuff, but then you come back at him, Skip, and you try to tell him, look, man, it still said sexual harassment and your name was in it, he gets straight up volatile. He don't want to talk about it. He just repeatedly states he had nothing to do with this. He is completely innocent, and he gets furious to the point where people close to him literally have to walk away from him because that's how he feels. Well, I don't know what to say.
Well, no,
I really don't.
To piggyback off your point, and I'll just make this point quickly before you go, Skip. James Dolan, I don't understand how he thought he could bring him into this situation and not have any pushback from WNBA owners, because the optics don't look good. You can't hire someone and have them in charge of a women's team when you have anything associated with them, especially in terms of sexual harassment. And also, I was going to say,
answer that question.
Well, no, I was going to ask you this, and you tell me your thoughts on this in terms of, I know I've met Isiah through you. I think he's a great guy. And I know you say he gets upset when he discusses this topic, but...
By the way, we've had him on the show.
And we've had him on the show. He's a good, he's a good guy.
Twice.
I have nothing but great things to say about him just from my interaction, but he can understand the pushback here. Can he not?
He doesn't. He doesn't. He truly, truly does not. To answer your, because I need to get to your first point about Dolan, but to answer your second point, he does not understand it because his attitude is MSG was found liable. It was their working environment. He was not assessed any punitive damages that he had to pay out whatsoever because he's innocent in all of this. He has nothing to do with sexual harassment. That's his position. He believes it's a media creation rife with lies and exaggerations and embellishment, and he's very hostile about that. But to get to your first point about Dolan bringing Isiah Thomas into the fray, here's what Dolan does have a very compelling argument that I would believe the Board of Governors for the WNBA would have to answer, Skip, Kerry, in the event that they deny Isiah co-ownership of the Liberty. If the case ultimately led to MSG being found guilty and liable, and they are the ones that had to pay out $11.6 million, if you don't want Isiah Thomas, why do you want Jim Dolan and MSG? Because they're the ones that had to pay. If they're the ones that have been assigned culpability in all of this, why is it that Isiah Thomas is the one that has to that is being denied? If you wanted to deny Isiah ownership, how come you're not denying James Dolan ownership?
Go ahead.
Because it's MSG. He was found liable. He's the one that had to pay the $11.6 million.
You answer that, Stip?
I don't want to try to retry this case in our court of public opinion. The findings were the findings. And remember, Isiah's actions, alleged or whatever, that the findings were that he was at the center of this, that somehow he was involved in this. And again, I don't want to get into more specifics of the case, but I'm going to accept the findings of the court. And I'm going to go a step further. And I do like your James Dolan point. It's a fair one in the bigger picture. But let me just ask you this. Let's keep it on Dolan for a second, because I often wonder this.
Sure.
Is James Dolan stupid or is he just brazen? Because think about this. The mere fact, to Kerry's point, it is insultingly laughable to me that this man, James Dolan, would bring this man, Isiah Thomas, after his involvement in this court case and the findings of the court, in to be an owner of a women's basketball team. Yeah. It's insulting to me because, to Kerry's point, it's a bad idea and it's a bad look for the WNBA. Maybe James Dolan's a bad look too. I'm with you on that one. But is this man dumb, naive, or does he just delight in being everybody's favorite villain here? Because is he sitting back right now laughing at all of us? I got you again? Because he loves to be the bad guy? Seriously. Because what is it, Stephen A? He had to know that this was going to be the negative reaction. He had to know.
No other company would hire somebody back.
Nobody would. This is laughable to me. What is going on in the mind of this man? Does he like to be New York City's favorite villain? Is that what's going on?
Let me tell you something right now. The word stupid comes to mind when I think about him and the New York Knicks. The word brazen comes to my mind when I think about James Dolan and everything else.
All right.
Because he is a billionaire. He simply does not care. This makes no sense to me. I've been on the record saying, if you're going to bring Isiah Thomas back, you bring him back to the Knicks. You don't bring him to the WNBA. Now, Isiah Thomas is quick to tell anybody, you know something? You know, hostile working environment. Tell me where it says, get the paperwork.
Okay.
Tell me from the courts where it says sexual harassment and my name. That's his position, and that's all he cares about. He doesn't care about anything else. He cares about that. But in the end, what it comes to is this, Skip. I agree with you. I look at Isiah Thomas, and I'm like, the WNBA?
What?
For what?
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Yeah.
It don't make any sense to me.
No.
If he's going to be back, he should be back with the
right.
Knicks in some capacity, at least player personnel.
Look.
It should be something like that, not this.
Clearly,
I agree.
James Dolan loves Isiah Thomas and always has. He's got a soft spot for him. They're best buddies.
Right.
They're kind of running buddies, if you will. And if you want to bring him back as your personal assistant because you're grooming him to ultimately replace Phil Jackson as the GM or
then
president,
do that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Then do that.
I mean, nobody would have raised an eyebrow, I don't think.
Yeah.
But this
is
just so insulting to everybody, and it's so vintage James Dolan.
Brazen is an appropriate word, and obviously we all agree the optics of it just don't look good. Plain and simple. Anyone can see that. Coming up next, folks, are the Patriots preparing to move on from number 12? That is the question. Someone threw out that idea. Herm Edwards will join the desk and perhaps let us know what he thinks about it. We'll be back in just a few moments.